The content in this video is for general educational use. It does not represent political opinions or judgments about any country, culture, or government. Information is based on publicly available sources and may be summarized or simplified. Viewers should verify details through multiple sources.
You ever feel like the world's problems are just too big, too tangled up to even begin to solve? Well, what if I told you the key to understanding our kind of chaotic present is to dig into histories we've pretty much forgotten? Let's dive in and see how the deep past might actually hold the map to our future.
I mean, just look around. We're facing a mountain of challenges. Pandemics, conflicts, a climate crisis that seems to get more real every single day. And there's this growing sense that the systems we've always relied on, well, they just aren't working anymore.
And if you look a little closer, you start to see this deep unfairness that seems woven into the very fabric of how our world works. It's this nagging feeling that the deck is stacked, leading to what a lot of people are calling a state of global injustice.
And that's exactly why you hear more and more people saying that small fixes and little tweaks, they're just not going to cut it. To deal with these huge challenges, what we really need are deep, systemic changes, the whole shebang.
But that just leads to the bigger question, right? How did we even get here? Where did these systems come from in the first place? And this is where history gets really powerful. The whole idea we're exploring here is that the answers to our modern problems aren't just in front of us. They're actually buried, waiting for us in the deep past. So to really see what that looks like, let's zoom in on one specific part of the world, the Arabian Gulf. Now, today, we tend to see it through a really narrow lens, oil and conflict. But its true history is so much richer and honestly, way more surprising. Just take a look at the map. The Gulf isn't some corner of the world. It's right at the heart of it. It's a natural crossroads, basically a liquid superhighway connecting Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. From the very beginning, this place was destined to be a global hub. And this quote just nails it. The story of the Gulf isn't about rigid borders or separate cultures. It's the story of a truly global space, a massive melting pot of people, ideas, and stuff that's been bubbling away for thousands of years. So the main point here is this was never some sleepy, isolated backwater. Not at all. It was a buzzing transit space. Think of it like a giant marketplace for massive empires. It was home to a society that was always on the move, full of merchants and sailors from India to East Africa. Connection was its lifeblood. Okay, now let's zoom in even more to see just how deep this history runs. We're going to the oases of Al Ain, in what's now the UAE. This ancient spot gives us a really mind-blowing perspective on the true timeline of global connection. I mean, just get a load of this timeline. We're not talking a few hundred years. People have been living and thriving here for over 7,000 years. Just let that sink in. We have solid proof of trade with Mesopotamia from 5,000 years ago. They engineered these incredible irrigation systems called falaj that literally made the desert bloom. It's just a staggering story of human innovation and connection that never stopped. And an object like this is what makes it all real. This is an ancient incense burner they found right there. A piece like this isn't just pottery. It's basically a passport from the past. It's real, tangible proof that this little desert oasis was plugged into these huge ancient trade routes that stretched across continents. It's incredible. Okay, so we've seen that the world's been deeply connected for a very, very long time. We're talking ancient trade routes, bustling port cities, the works. But this long history of being connected brings up a really critical question. When you have all these goods and people and ideas constantly flowing between different cultures and continents, how do you govern all that? Who gets to make the rules? And more importantly, who benefits from those rules? This question leads us straight to the beginnings of modern international law. And the backstory here is, well, it's pretty revealing. Around 1550, the first real attempt at international law was created, mainly by colonial powers like Spain, and its purpose was pretty clear: to manage and justify taking resources out of the Americas. Now, flash forward to the 1950s, and the whole system kind of splits in two. On one side, you get this ethical law, which sounds great. It's all about fixing the wrongs of colonialism. But then you have the material law, the rules that are actually enforced, and which often just keep the old power dynamics going, just with a different name.
And this is where the past comes crashing right into our present. The patterns that were set centuries ago about who gets the resources, about legal systems built to help the powerful, they're still echoing today, and they're at the root of some of our biggest crises. Take this graph, for example. It shows the value of the pearl fishery in Bahrain. See that enormous spike there in the late 1800s and early 1900s? That was driven almost entirely by huge demand from Western markets. So an entire region's economy gets reshaped by outside forces, which leads to this massive boom and then a devastating bust. Now, think about a modern version of that, climate change. The countries in the global north are responsible for most of the historical emissions, but it's places like Africa that are getting hit the hardest, with higher temperature spikes, more extreme weather, and huge impacts on things like food security, especially in vulnerable places like South Sudan. The cause and the effect are just tragically disconnected. So what was the response? Well, donor countries promised to give $100 billion a year to help developing nations adapt to this crisis. A crisis, by the way, that they mostly didn't create. But that promise, it hasn't been fulfilled. It's a perfect echo of that old split between ethical talk and what actually happens on the ground. So, where does all this leave us? This whole journey into hidden history isn't just a history lesson. It's really about understanding the deep roots of our present so that we can start making much smarter choices for our future. And here's why this matters so much. If there's one thing you take away from all this, it should be this. Being globally connected isn't some new thing from the internet age. The long, long history of places like the Gulf shows us that connection is the norm for humanity. It's what we've always done. Which leaves us with one final really crucial question. If we accept that our world has always been a deeply connected crossroads, then the challenge isn't if we're going to be connected. The challenge is how. How do we stop propping up old systems built for extraction and instead build new ones that are fundamentally just for everyone? That's the question our hidden histories are practically begging us to answer.